Hello, Mythheads, and welcome to Mythoholics. I'm your host, Sade, and today I am joined by a special guest. Her name is Jessica Johnson of Hidden San Diego. And for all you SD natives out there, I'm sure you're already following her on Instagram and know all about the cool locations and awesome spots that she's introduced on her site. And thank you so much for coming and sitting down with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm like super excited because I'm not an SD native. I've actually lived here for 10 years.
That's a long time, though.
It is. And I feel like I know San Diego so well. And literally, I look at your posts and I'm like, I have never heard of any of these places.
Nice.
So it's really cool to just see that. And thank you for that too. And you have a book out now too about it, right?
Yeah,
and
Banded San Diego.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Thank
you. I definitely want to, I'm going to need to buy that because I want to have that for sure. But yeah, so we're just going to talk about a couple of these locations here in San Diego. And Jessica has some personal experiences with them. And I also just wanted to give our listeners some historical context behind the places we're going to be talking about. One of the places I've never even heard of, so I'm excited to kind of just hear what it's about, hear the myth, hear the lore about those locations. And they're really interesting. Yeah. And so the first one, now it's kind of like three parts, right? So there's like the Quest Haven, and is the Elfin Forest inside of that?
So Quest Haven is actually just one road, Quest Haven Road, but
Gotcha.
There's like a lot of offshoots on that road, including a retreat, which I believe is 300 acres, Quest Haven Retreat.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so the retreat is the reason the street is named that. It's named after the retreat. And then there's Elfin Forest, which is right next to it, Harmony Grove, Spooks Canyon. Okay. They're all in the exact neighboring region, and they kind of all have the same energy, in my opinion.
Wow. Yeah, I've definitely never been up there. And that's in like, is that like near San Marcos area?
Yeah, it's Escondido, San Marcos cusp. It's changed a lot over the past decade, unfortunately, due to development. So kind of those old vibes that it used to give, it doesn't necessarily give them the same anymore because there's just so many new houses there now.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yeah, and I was reading it's kind of like a shortcut that people sometimes take. Yep. And I've actually only been to San Marcos. I've stayed overnight there like one time. Okay. So it's Escondido. I've been there a few times, but San Marcos is very foreign to me. Yeah. So that's really cool. And I know that there is a lot of lore that's kind of hidden in there. Yeah. So let's jump into that.
So, I mean, there's just endless talks about the area being haunted. And a lot of the neighbors, the people that live out there, the people that stay at the retreat, they all try to shut it down. But I'm like, there's no way that this many people have situations that have happened to them out there without it being true.
So is the retreat like active? Is it current?
Is active. Okay. I was just there 2 weeks ago interviewing the director, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so...
that's so awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely active. He shut down everything that we were saying about... Because the whole rumor is that it used to be an insane asylum. And I had... Because I've rebuilt my website several times and I've lost all my old comments, unfortunately. But one lady commented probably 6 or 7 years ago that her sister escaped a mental hospital on Quest Haven Road and that she just talked about it forever and ever and ever. But I'm like, okay, so there's someone that's actually saying that they escaped it from like the 60s or whenever it was, you know. I'm like, is there truth to it? I'm not sure.
Right.
So then Harmony Grove, which is like 5 minutes away from Quest Haven Road, there is a psychic village out there called Harmony Grove Spiritualist Society that is over 100 years old. It actually, most of it burnt down in the Cocoa Fire, and I think that was 2014, but parts of it still remain. But I remember talking to the people a long time ago, and they were saying that they would see the White Witch, who a lot of people have seen, said that they've seen her, and they said that they've seen Native American spirits hanging from the trees. Yeah. So I'm wondering, like, what is the actual history out there? Was there, because I do remember hearing that there had maybe been a massacre of Native Americans out there, and I'm like, and that they had possibly cursed the land, which is possible.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's so much, like, rich Native American history, just even on, like, the western side of the United States. Like,
Yeah.
that would not shock me at all.
Yeah.
And I think I saw the tribe that used to live there. I don't know how to say it. It's
Kumeyaay.
Okay.
There's a Kumeyaay. So the San Diego tribe is called the Kumeyaay, but then they're divided into regions. There's the Cupeño, the Digueño.
I think the Digueño is the one I saw, and I was like, ooh, I don't know how to say that.
Yeah. So, and I mean, there's been just so much horrible stuff that happened to them. And I didn't even learn until recently when I was writing about the history of Old Town that it all began in Old Town for the entire West Coast. Like, the European colonizing began right here in San Diego, and then it just moved on throughout the entire West Coast. I didn't realize that. Yeah,
that is really cool.
Yeah.
And because Old Town, for those of you who don't know, Old Town is like a historic region of San Diego. It's not very big. I mean, it's pretty small. And I would assume, would it be on like that one main strip? Is that kind of where they built up their town, basically, like their town center?
Yeah, it kind of all began right there. Yeah,
okay,
pretty much. And then but what's messed up was that was originally like the oldest Native American village in San Diego. Wow. And when the Europeans first landed here, most of them died and only 8 of them survived. And the Kumeyaay took them in, gave them medicine, brought them back to health. And so then the Europeans built a fort, Presidio Park.
Okay, yep.
They built their fort right there, right above the village, and then slowly they ended up killing everyone or like forcing them into Catholicism. There's a mission right up there. And then there's like a sacred Native American burial ground in Old Town. And now if you look at Google Satellite, it's just a building. They just completely wiped away the history.
I hate that when there's something that, I mean, it's probably a darker history for a lot of people, but it's history I think should be known nonetheless.
Oh, yeah. And I'm just here to tell the facts. I'm just, that's all I really want to know is what's the truth? Right. What is the truth? Better or worse, ugly, pretty, like, let's just get that out there as accurate as possible. And I'm learning as I go, so.
Yeah. And I love that because, I mean, I'm from Michigan. So, and the town I'm from, like the house I grew up in was built in the 1850s.
Wow.
And so like and the road that I grew up on was the first highway it's called Marquette, Michigan. And it was also very, very heavily inundated with Native American tribes. And the French came in and they're the ones who settled there. And pretty much everything that's named there is either French or it's Indian. Mm-hmm. And so it's so interesting to me to come to a place where, like, in my mind, I feel like the western side of the United States feels so, compared to the eastern side, feels a lot less like rich in history. Yeah. But then as I go on and as I've lived here and as I've learned more about San Diego, especially Old Town and the missions and all of that, I'm like learning so much more that, like I didn't know that it's hard to find because it's not really out there.
Yeah, it might not be as rich with European history because we're younger, but it's just as rich with Native American history. And that's what I want to slowly delve into more. So
yeah.
And just tell the stories of the past.
Exactly. Like that's so cool.
Yeah.
So I know that you said that you've heard different kind of myths, kind of lores about Quest Haven, and then you've also had some encounters there.
Yeah, so even before my website Hidden San Diego existed, I was still blogging. I've been blogging since 2002 on LiveJournal is where I used to blog. And
I remember that.
Were you on LiveJournal?
I was.
Yeah.
That was like the OG.
I miss it. I'm like, why did everyone have to leave? Let's bring LiveJournal back. I'm like, now everyone's just angry on Facebook.
Yes, there was LiveJournal and then came like Blogspot.
I know. That's when everyone dispersed though. And then everyone went all different ways. I'm like, let's just all go back to LiveJournal.
That's so cool.
But yeah, so there was like a haunted San Diego community that I used to like actively contribute to. And like, so I was like, became really interested in Quest Haven because I moved like 5 minutes away from it. So I was like, okay, well, so we were going there all the time. I was like interviewing the people at the Spiritualist Center and stuff. And one night we decided to go hiking at night on Quest Haven Road. So it used to be, now it's gated. It's gated off now. Like they've turned it mostly into a hiking trail. Like to even get to the other side, you have to drive all the way around San Alejo to even get to the retreat. And I think they largely did that because so many people were driving through and causing so many problems. So anyway, so we get a big group. Well, not big. It was like a car full. We get a car full. It's like 2 a.m. We park. Keep in mind, no one can drive through there. That's like a key part of this. No one can drive through. And we start, right when we start walking right away, I'm like, you guys, I have a really bad feeling about this. I think we should go home. And nobody listens to me, of course. So we've got our flashlights on and we're walking. And then out of nowhere, a car starts coming at us full speed. And like a back note is that a lot of the people that live out there can get very hostile and aggressive to people. We've had a gun pulled on us in the past, telling like someone screaming at us to get off of their land. We're harming their land. Well, really, we were just trying to make a U-turn. That was, and this is all in my 20s. These stories I'm about to tell are like, you know, when I was younger. Like there's so many stories. People like getting run off the road and stuff. So like we're already scared. So like the car's coming at us full speed. We turn off the flashlights. It's pitch black. And we start running. All my friends hop a fence, and I didn't hop the fence. I ran down a bank, and I'm running full speed down this bank, and I tripped on a raised root and fell, like, face planted onto a fallen tree. Wow. And my face broke the fall. And, like, I just remember right when I hit it, you know, getting up and, like, kind of like how you see, like, in the cartoon characters, like, the stars everywhere. I saw it. Like, I felt that, except for I felt all these angry spirits like all around me, like, like get the fuck off of her, like get out of, you know, like I just felt that everywhere. It was the creepiest thing ever. And I just remember first thing I did was lick my teeth to make sure they were still there, and they were. Yeah. And I was gushing blood everywhere. And then the car turned around. And then my friends are like, Jessica, like you can come out now. Like the car turned around. I was like, I think I need a little help, guys. Like, I hurt myself, you know? And I just remember being embarrassed. My adrenaline was going so high that I didn't even feel the pain. But I just remember when my friend brought her hand to help me up, it was all sticky because I was covered in blood.
Oh, man.
And, yeah, I broke my nose, and that little, like, thing that connects your gum to your lip, that tore. But, yeah, so that stopped my hunting for a long time. Like, you know, my researching. And I'm like, you know, maybe whatever's going on out here wants to be left alone.
Yeah, it wants to be left alone, for sure.
So, yeah, so now I don't dig too deep into that anymore.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I love talking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes to seeing, I mean, I've never even been to the Whaley house.
Oh.
I am just like, I'm very like, no.
You're smart.
Yeah.
Because that can attach itself to you.
Exactly. And I fully believe that. And I mean, a lot of people don't. And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Because they haven't experienced it.
Yep. You have your fun.
Yeah.
I know too many stories. I'm good. I can live through those.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like I've never, unless I've been somewhere and didn't know it. I mean, that's the only way that I would ever.
But you're not actively seeking out, trying to communicate with it or any of that. See, I was doing that a lot.
Yeah.
And then it'll come to you.
It will. Like, what you seek, you'll find.
And it can follow you home. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, no, I've got a little girl at home. She doesn't need to be a part of that.
No, not at all.
So let's jump into the Whaley house. Okay. Because, again, I actually listened to a podcast. I knew some stuff about the Whaley house, but it was all kind of convoluted. I didn't know timelines. I didn't know stories. And I actually listened to a podcast about it from I listen to Morbid podcast pretty regularly, and they did one on the Whaley house, and they did a really good job.
What did they say?
So they actually said a lot of what I have written down here. You know, they talked about it. The house was built in 1857 and by Thomas Whaley, and that it was built on a burial ground, and that also, like, I don't know, right before maybe.
So that was probably one of the Kumeyaay burial grounds. They probably had two then.
Yes, because that's what I was going to ask you when you brought that up.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. They must have had two, because the other one because I was on the actual website, it's called Kosai. That was actually the name of the tribe. Like, I was on their website, and it showed the markers of where the burial ground was. But, like, now I'm wondering, like, well, what else would that have been?
Right.
You know? So.
Yeah, and so they said that also soon before the house was built, that a slave was actually hung from a tree on the property as well. And so his spirit, I think it was, I have it written down here, James Robinson.
Interesting. There's a Robinson house in Old Town. I wonder if that was his house.
Maybe. And so James Robinson was hung, and his spirit is one of the spirits that's commonly seen in the house.
Okay,
or
I'd heard
felt.
about Yankee Jim. Did you read about him?
Yes.
He was also hung there. So the Whaley house was like the bottom was the courthouse. I think before they lived here, it was originally courthouse. And they would hang the people, not just one person, but they would hang, if you were
Like
found
prisoners,
guilty, right, in the, I don't know if it was the tree or whatever it's called, like right there in the backyard. And then the cemetery, which is still open to the public, El Campo Santo Cemetery is like a block down, and then they would get buried there.
Yeah. And then also a lot of tragedy happened with the Whaley family where, you know, was it his son? Yeah, his son had died of scarlet fever. And then later his daughter had committed suicide. And so it's just a lot of like
bad energy.
Dark. Yeah, just a lot of dark stuff you don't want to be around. And my husband's been there, but I think in school they do a tour there.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, like I've actually never been there. I've always seen the outside. I've just never had the desire to go like book a little tour.
Right.
I'm good.
Yeah, smart.
Yeah. So, but it's definitely one of the things, I mean, it's widespread. I think it's probably one of the more famous spots, even in America, that's haunted.
Yeah, they do say it's one of the most haunted, at least in the U.S. I'm not sure about the world, but probably not the world. But
yeah, I mean, Europe's,
yeah, there's
Europe's
a lot.
got a lot.
There's a lot going on everywhere.
Yeah. But yeah, for sure, it's definitely one of the more well-known ones. Yeah. And so I wanted to get into that. Let's talk about that. You know, what are your experiences there? So
it's either a 3 or a 4-part story that spans over like 20 years.
Okay.
So when I was a kid, my mom was taking us, because I'm a native San Diegan. I should point that out. I've lived here my whole life. When I was a kid, my mom would take us to Old Town all the time. And we'd go to the Whaley house pretty frequently, enough for me to feel comfortable, like kind of running around upstairs by myself when my mom was still downstairs with my brother. And I was probably like 5 at the time, I want to say, 5 or 6. And now if you go to the Whaley house, everything is glassed off. You can't even go in the rooms. When I was a kid, they were roped off, which means you're still not supposed to go in them. But as a child, I went under the rope into one of the rooms. I was by myself upstairs, and there was a long mirror. And when I looked in the mirror behind me, I saw a lady talking to a little boy. And the boy, well, I couldn't hear anything, though, but they were talking to each other. And he was dressed, like, in suspenders, like, if I recall, shorts, little paperboy hat, and he looked to be about 5, and he was looking up at the lady. But here's the weird thing, and this is why for the longest time I'm like, you had to have made that up in your head. This didn't happen.
Yeah,
Well, she was all green. And that, but it just keeps going and it gets crazier and crazier. She was all green, like head to toe, everything green, but she wasn't glowing or anything. She didn't look supernatural, if I recall, but looking through the mirror did seem a little distorted, if I recall. And I just remember her looking up at me and giving me the most mischievous smile. And then I don't know if people started going up the stairs or what, but something happened to where I turned around, nobody was there, turned back in the mirror, gone, it's over. So when we were leaving, I talked to the lady that was working there, and I was like, this place is haunted. Did you, like, by a woman, you know, like, green lady? And she's like, oh, yeah, like, yeah, you know, and I'm thinking, like, she's yanking my chain. Nobody believes me. So I kind of go through my childhood and teen years, like, I know what I saw so vividly. So then I'm about 19, and I'm at Old Town again, and I'm in one of their bookstores, and it's talking about haunted Old Town. And I'm thumbing through it, and then I see a portion talking about the green lady that haunts Old Town. And it had this really cheesy illustration of a green ghost that obviously looked nothing like it. And so then that was like, okay, so something, maybe I'm not crazy. Yeah. Now here it is right there. And I wish I'd kept that book. Fast forward to when I'm like maybe 25. And we're back in Old Town again for Halloween, and they're doing, like, there's some ghost hunting group. I guess they've been on television and stuff. They're pretty big, and they do a lot of ghost hunting in the Whaley house. And they're hosting some event. They've got a booth. There's a whole line wrapped around the Whaley house. to do night tours. And I go up to them and I was like, I had an experience here and I would love to tell you guys my story. They're like, sure, And so I started going into detail about it, and they suddenly got very interested with me, and they pulled me aside, and they're like, do you mind if we show you some photos of ghosts that we've captured on camera? I was like, sure. So they first pull up this one picture, and clearly you can see a creepy old lady in the, kind of all foggy, and I'm like, no. I'm like, that's not her. I was like, she was young and beautiful, probably like in her early 20s or teenager, and they look at each other, and they're like, Violet. And so then they show me an image, and it very, very closely resembled what I remember her looking like. And I'm like, oh my God, I really think that's her. And then suddenly they both look at each other and they're like, oh my gosh. They're like, every time we capture Violet on camera, she always has a green orb around her. I was like, oh, I'm like, it's coming together.
Yeah.
So.
And because Violet did have a child or 2 children, right?
I don't know. All I know is she was married and heartbroken, I think, and killed herself in the back house.
Yeah, but I think she had 1 kid.
I don't know. I do want to learn more about Violet.
I'm not sure, because I knew that she was really upset that her husband had left her, but maybe she didn't. I don't know how long they were together, though. That's the thing. But I've heard of the Green Lady. So when you started,
tell me where you?
Because I heard it just like in reading. It says like it talks about the different spirits that haunt the house, and the Green Lady was always one of them.
Oh my God!
Or a lady dressed in green. Like it was like one of those.
I wonder if people are truly seeing this, or if people are like grabbing this from what I wrote, because it's been on my website for like 10 years. I blogged about it like 15 years ago. Because someone else, I remember telling me that they, like on a ghost tour they do of Old Town, they're talking about the Green Lady now. And I'm like, are other people really witnessing her? Or are they just
I've heard of it before.
Pulling this from my site and like letting that be part of the story? I really hope other people are seeing her.
Yeah, no,
that
I'm sure they
feel
have.
better. So, yeah. Okay, so anyway, so fast forward a week later, because then at this time I lived in University Heights, which was, close enough to Old Town and stuff. We were going down there often. And we're at the Victorian homes that are right above the Whaley House. And it's sunset, and I'm photographing this one Victorian home that had been left unlocked and open, even though it's like almost nighttime. And I'm like photographing it from the outside. And to the naked eye, nothing. But every time I took a picture through the viewfinder, there was a green orb. And I'm like, what the heck? And this is like right after like the whole like ghost hunting thing had just happened. And the lady's like, I'll email you some photos of her like shortly. So that's also kind of part of it. So suddenly I start taking a ton of photos. And I have it on a tripod. Boom, boom, boom. I take like 20 in a row. And when you look in the camera, the orb grows and it moves. It looks like it's moving around the whole doorway. And I'm like, what the heck? So like when I get home, I upload them. I email it to the one lady. And right when I send it to her, I get an email back from her. It's like we were both sending each other at the same time. And she was sending me a picture of a green orb that they captured of her inside the Whaley house.
That's insane. So the Victorian houses you were at behind the Whaley house.
Yeah, the Heritage Park it's called.
Oh yes.
It's really beautiful.
My friend got married there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was going to say, are they vacant? But now that you said that, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So like one other little tiny key part, although you're saying that they had a son, if I recall, for the longest time, like I would always read about a little girl haunting the Whaley house, and I was always like, well, I saw a boy, and so I started like reading more, and I got onto this like website where psychics are like talking about like their experiences at the Whaley house, and all of them said, no, it's a little boy that haunts it. And I'm like, aha, it falls right in line with what I saw. So,
yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
And then I also, one of the things that I've also heard is, I think if you go on the 7th step, you'll feel like a presence, or you can hear someone walking up, because Thomas Whaley was shot on the 7th step.
Was he?
Yeah, that's another thing that I had heard. And he dies like in his wife's arms.
He died in there? I need to read up more on this again.
So, and that's, I hope I'm not, I don't think I'm, because I have so much up here, but
no, that's me too. I'm constantly writing things. I'm not like
I can't filter it out, but I'm like 95% positive that the 7th step is supposed to be like, if you stand there, you'll feel his wife.
Yeah, or smell a cigar. I've definitely heard those kind of things.
Yes,
but I didn't know why.
Yeah, because he was it was when they, the town had like stormed the house because they wanted old court documents. And the wife didn't want them, Thomas and the wife, they didn't want them to come in and take it because they were still living there at the time.
Okay.
Or something like that. There was some kind of conflict. And then he was going up the stairs, and she was already upstairs because she had ran upstairs, and they shot him.
Oh my!
And he died in his wife's arms because she was like running to him, something
sad.
like that.
That's crazy.
And so check that out, verify. But I'm like 95% sure that that's what happened, and I know it's the seventh step.
Okay,
so
they're buried at Mount Hope Cemetery in San Diego too.
Oh,
like,
wow.
there's a lot of really like the early day influencers and business tycoons, all the like founders of San Diego. They're all buried out there. It's pretty cool to visit.
That is
all of
cool.
it, and they're all in like the same area too.
Yeah.
So the older area of the cemetery.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool to see them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's jump into then. I know you had some encounters that you just wanted to kind of talk about. And I was really excited when you said that because like with Mythoholics, we always kind of cover myths, legends, lores, folklore, stuff that's, written down somewhere. But I've wanted to kind of cross over and start covering things like hauntings and different buildings like the Whaley House. There's so many across the United States. And I felt like this would be like this whole episode really is just a perfect thing to bridge the gap. And so I wanted to talk about some of your encounters just living up north. So you live like 25 minutes north, something like that, a place that I never really go. If you're from San Diego, you totally understand, like, you really stay, like, where you live.
I was like, not me. I'm everywhere all the time, but that's for my job. But
yeah, and, like, if I, when we lived in East County, it's like, I'm just in East County. When you live in San Diego City, you're just in San Diego City. When you live up north, you never come down south.
Yeah.
So it's, like, it's really, like, it's interesting, though. It makes it cool because there's so much history and so many different pockets.
Oh, yeah.
And San Diego's a lot bigger than I think people realize.
It really is. I mean, we've got the desert, we've got mountains with snow.
Exactly.
We've got it all.
You got the ocean, you got the beach, like, you have everything.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some things that stood out to you.
So I wanted to share, because I've done podcasts before, and people, they wanted me to talk about, like, things that I've already talked about the Whaley House in Questing before. And I'm like, well, why don't I share some stories that I haven't shared before? It's not related to my website per se. They're not spots on my site, but it's just haunted houses that I lived in while I lived in Escondido. So Escondido translated means hidden, which like, out of all the spots on my site, Escondido definitely, I have the longest list of hidden spots, first of all. But before it was called Escondido, it used to be called Rincón del Diablo, which is the Devil's Corner.
Interesting.
And I do love Escondido. It's super diverse, but it definitely does have dark undertones to it. Not everywhere. There's different areas. But anyway, so I was living on East Grand Avenue, I guess when it all began. And it started off with... I guess you could call it sleep paralysis, and later I learned it's called old Hag Syndrome. Have you heard of old Hag Syndrome?
No, I've definitely heard of sleep paralysis.
Okay, so I didn't know that all these people, in fact, I was just talking to a friend a couple days ago, and she's witnessed the hag too. Like, it's like basically an old woman that like is on your chest and you can't talk.
I've heard of that. I have heard of that. I didn't know it was called something.
Yeah, I did. There's a Wikipedia page for it.
There's podcasts that specifically talk about sleep paralysis, and you would be shocked.
So
how
scary.
Many people have had that experience
with the hag?
With the hag,
the woman.
Yes.
Who
with
is
the
she?
woman sitting on her chest?
Who is she?
And some
my friend
people
saw her. She had long black hair.
I was going to say they described her as being like really like long black hair, and they couldn't like make out her facial features because her hair was like long. It was almost like.
My God.
But they were sitting on their chest, and had some of them say that her hands were around your neck or like around their neck. Some of them say that they were just sitting there and they couldn't breathe.
What the heck?
So
what in the heck?
Look into that.
It's so scary. There's old illustrations of her like on top of the person looking all demonized. But anyway, like, so when all my hauntings began, it began with the old hag.
Okay.
And so basically what happened is I was living with roommates. I didn't have a car at the time. They all did. All their cars were getting broken into. They'd had enough of Escondido. They left. I decided to stay because I'd made a lot of new friends out there. And I'm like, well, I'm going to stay. I'm having fun. You know? So I'm living alone. I had my alarm set for like 7 a.m. because I worked that morning. Anyway, middle of the night, I'm like, I guess half asleep, half awake. Like I'm aware that I'm sleeping. I can hear myself breathing heavily, but I'm also like awake. I'm conscious that I'm asleep. I don't know. It was like, you know, whatever that state is. And suddenly, it's been a long time. I was like, I think 20 when this happened. Suddenly, I feel something on me, and I hear a woman go, "I'm in you. I'm in you." And like she's just cackling over me, and I just watched my body crawl away into the living room while she's cackling at me the whole time. And I'm like, please don't hurt me. Whatever you do, don't hurt me. And, you know, and I don't remember what else happened. It went on for a while. All I know is my alarm clock suddenly went off at like 3 a.m. and it like completely woke me up out of it, even though the alarm was set for 7. So that was really creepy. And I like turned it off, I think, and then I was paralyzed with fear for the rest of the morning until that too, until my alarm went off regularly and the sun was up and then I could move again. And I'm like, what the heck happened? That was like the scariest thing ever. But then like all the hauntings began. I moved out of that house, but because I didn't have a car and I was working 2 jobs and I had to walk to both of them and they were like kind of opposite directions, I kept moving down Grand Avenue to different houses. So anyway, I ended up at the bottom of Grand Avenue at the Grand Rose Apartments and living by myself again. And I had gotten this, when I visited Canada, I got this wizard from a witch shop. And I would keep the wizard by my computer. And all the time, that wizard would change directions. Like, literally, I could look away 1 second, look back, and he's changed a completely different direction. And it was, like, constantly, like, what's going on, you know? So one day I have a friend over, and we're listening to music. I remember it was the Psychedelic Furs, Love My Way, which is already kind of a creepy song. Yeah. But, like... the songs play normal, and suddenly it gets really slow, and it starts going, love my way. This is on my computer, so it's like, how is this suddenly getting slow? And in the background, you could hear, like demon. Oh, my gosh. Straight up demon. And then suddenly the song got really fast. And then it got slow again, and you could hear, like, like demon voices. Oh. And then suddenly the wizard, like jumped off of my table and its arm broke off. And I'm like, oh my God, the wizard, you know? And I just threw it out my window, even though then it's just in the bush in front of my window. But still. Yeah, so then I was doing a long-distance relationship at that point. Eventually, my boyfriend moved back, and we lived with each other. And we would witness things all the time. Like, I would wake up to the light on, and I'm like, why do you have the light on? And he's like, there was just a figure in the corner, you know, just, like, looking at us, you know. Or, like, we would be, like, getting ready to go to sleep, and our light would click on. And we're like, what the heck? We'd click it off. It would click back on again. I remember one day I got home from work and I was like, I worked at a plant nursery. I got home, I had like 30 minutes to change and eat, and then I have to go waitress. And I'm looking in the mirror doing my makeup, and I had like a little lamp next to me with like one of the, you have to like pull it to turn it on. Yeah. There's no breeze in my room, but suddenly like it starts like clinging. Like you would think that there was like a heavy breeze like clinging it onto the little pole, and I just felt this presence, and I was like, if something is in here with me, like, reveal yourself, you know? Mm-hmm. And, like, right when I said that through the mirror, I could see, like, in my hallway, like, these lights kind of, like, I don't know how to describe it, like, kind of, like, radiating behind me. Like, pulsing. Yeah, little things like that. Or, like, one time, like, because my boyfriend was working at, like, 5 in the morning. Obviously, I'm still asleep. And I remember one time he, like, got up to get ready for work, and, like, the bedroom door slammed shut. And I'm like, God, like, what's his problem? You know? Yeah. And it gets ice cold in the bedroom. And it was, like, this terrifying feeling. And then he comes in, and he's like, why'd you slam the door? And I'm like, I didn't slam the door. I thought you slammed the door. And then, yeah, I would get locked out of my house all the time, too, like deadbolted out. I would leave for like a minute, come back deadbolted. It would happen so often that my neighbor had to put a ladder against his fence so I could like climb the ladder and go through my backyard to get into my house. So finally, one of his friends decides to pray over our house. Yeah. And he brings a little cassette tape of like gospel music, and he he puts it in, he presses play, and he's like, oh, demons hate this music. And it's like, Jesus loves you. Yeah. And within a minute, it snapped the tape. Like, ate it, snapped it in half. And we're like, okay, I told you. I'm like, I told you,
There's something.
Like this, yeah. And he prayed over the house or like, like, you're Jesus, we felt all this warm, tingly sensation come over us. And then after that, nothing happened in that house again. And that stopped things for a long time. Then I would have like little creepy things happen over the years, but for the most part, it stopped. And that's also kind of when I stopped ghost hunting, because this is simultaneous the times when I'm going to Quest Haven,
Gotcha.
So yeah, like that kind of like stopped
bringing that. Yeah, bringing all that home.
Yeah,
I know. I am such a that's like my worst nightmare.
It's so scary. And this is what I try to explain to people. I'm like, you're not just seeing little things, you feel it.
Yeah.
And the feeling you get is
there's
the creepiest feeling ever of having some paranormal entity, oftentimes dark, it seems, in the room with you, especially when it won't leave and it's just there all the time. You're living alone. Like, it's really scary.
Luckily, I honestly don't think I could ever live alone. And I had roommates up until the time I got married. Yeah. So I was like, I don't think, and I had to live alone for like a week. And I was like, I don't know how people do this.
I don't know how I did it either.
It's so like, it's terrifying to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, thank you for sharing those stories. And like I said, I love talking about this stuff, but I'm such a wimp when it comes to like, I don't go anywhere that I know is haunted. Yeah. I don't want to see it. I'll hear about it all day long. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go into those places. I don't want to experience anything. Yeah. I'm like I'm scared. I'm scared of it. I'm just like I don't want to deal with it. So but I mean, like I said, like I love talking about the history of it just for history's sake and just like knowing like what happened there and why it's so dark, know, why it carries that energy, why those things have been trapped there for so long.
It inspired me. I never did it, but I was like, I want to create a website that allows people to talk about the house they lived in. So like, it's like, you type in your address and you're like, 3 different people that have lived here have talked about their stories of living here. Like, because it's like, did someone die here?
Because you
like,
think it's just
what is
you.
going on?
Yeah, like you feel so isolated. Like you think it's just you and you have no idea the person that lives before you or the person that came after you, what they experienced, if it was the same thing.
Or what energy they were bringing to it.
Exactly. What happened when the person before you lived there? What were they into?
Who knows?
What were they dabbling in? Yeah. So, that always that gets me a little bit. Yeah. But, well, thank you so much for just coming down here and just having this conversation with me. And if you guys aren't already, follow Hidden San Diego at Hidden San Diego on Instagram and check out her website at hiddensandiego.net. And you also have... you have 2 Instagrams, right? You have Hidden San Diego
and then Hidden California.
And Hidden California. I just started following Hidden California.
Yay.
Because I'm just like, I love it. I want to see more. So she has 2, Hidden San Diego and Hidden California on Instagram. Definitely go check it out. Follow her. Check out her book. When did you release your book?
March of last year.
Okay. For some reason I thought it was March this year, but still it has a really cool cover. It's like a great coffee table book.
Thanks.
Like it looks awesome.
Thank you.
I definitely want to dive into that. So as always, if you want to suggest a creature or a story for us to cover over here at Mythoholics, email us at mythoholicspodcast@gmail.com. Send us a DM on Instagram at mythoholicspodcast. And we just launched a true crime blog. So I'm dipping into the blog community once again and talking about true crime cases that I feel like don't get a whole lot of light. So there are definitely ones that aren't too talked about. They're really gruesome because I love the gruesomeness. So check that out at mythoholicspodcast.com, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.